Hello guys, this is Solo Tech Gaming here. So, apparently this was released actually 3 days, actually it's going to be technically 4 days ago, because I'm probably going to update or upload this video on the 23rd, but they've released the dev branch 0.17. There's a lot of stuff to go through here, so we're going to take it one line at a time, but no, this has to be, they're really making huge changes to the game from what I can tell you. So let's just start with the new content here. So let me just scroll up a little bit here. So essentially, the storage facilities that they've been teasing about is so the ability to store huge amounts of crates, weapons, and equipment. So that is being added to the game. The facility, I think they were talking about just leaving them in the port bases or so. So essentially, the problem that you would have is you would have huge amounts of crates or so, but you would have the choice of either keep them in chests or trucks or so, or just depositing them in port bases. But the problem with or not port bases, but just all different types of towns. The problem with that was the fact that it essentially made it so it was impossible to, unless like it was just ammunition or so, like regular like small arms ammunition, it was almost impossible to take everything from the crate after it was deposited into a town and drag it to a different location or so. But with the storage facilities, you can put entire crates there, allowing for you to then just carry around or basically just acquire whatever crates you need or so of whatever weapons or ammunition you need, essentially, which is really cool. But that isn't the big thing. The big thing is the new system with tech pods, essentially. So tech pods, instead of being deposited into a tech center and then being used to essentially being used as a point towards upgrading or like getting new weapons or so, new equipment or so, new structures. Instead, tech pods are now a medium for these two new pods, upgrade pods and research pods. And how they work is that actually, I have to go even another level deeper. So instead of having the workshop, the weapons factory, the, what is it? And I guess the shirts factory as well. So instead they're having one building, which is called the factory. And essentially how the factory works is that it works on a modular system. So the factory will require upgrade pods to build facilities. And these facilities will unlock the ability to actually build new types of weapons or so. So essentially it's all now in a modular system, and apparently according to the dev blog right here, so essentially they're adding factories to all different cities, and this I guess allows for you to specialize cities to build certain items or so. And essentially this can be done on the front line as well, but to risk of it falling into enemy hands, of course. But this allows for you to specialize certain factories in certain towns for certain activities or so. You could either put all your eggs in one basket where you have one factory that produces everything, which I guess would be more logistically sound because you could just put all your resources in that one town. But granted, if you lose that, then you won't be able to build all those weapons anywhere else. So, or you can spread out your factories or so and your facilities, making so one factory in one town has this one facility that allows for it to specialize in small arms or so, while the other one specializes in making explosive ammunition and whatnot or so, which essentially makes it so it is easier to, so if you lose a town or so, basically you're not losing all your eggs in one basket or so, a more distributed allotment of resources. The other part that they're having or so is research pods, and that essentially works like just normal tech pods or so from before, where you essentially use them to unlock different weapons and equipment and structures, basically. So essentially, they're making this is an interesting move because essentially the way the system works right now in the late game, once all the tech is unlocked, tech pots are essentially useless. All they do is collect, and they really have no worth whatsoever. But now with the new system, so tech pots can actually be used in the late game to further flesh out different facilities. And also it does make an interesting meta because now your team will have to choose between either researching new technology, going completely all the way over there, building facilities, so the ability to actually produce new weaponry, or a middle ground where you sacrifice either your ability to produce as much weaponry as you want or as many facilities as you want, or so in factories, or sacrificing the ability to gain new research, basically, so obtaining the ability to actually make new weapons or so. So that seems really cool. It seems really interesting. And apparently the refineries have been changed as well, to the point where they essentially, instead of having where you have this is from what I'm understanding, so you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I can tell in the dev blog right now, it says that apparently refineries now work the same way as the new factories. Will now, instead of having a sulfur refinery or a scrap refinery, instead you have one refinery, and you can instead use the upgrade pods to make facilities so they can make each resource type or so. So you can essentially make it so all the refineries, so if you have the upgrade pods or so, you can make it so all refineries can make can refine, so, well, not refine, but can make, actually, scratch that, yeah, so refinery, yeah, so essentially, scratch everything I just said. I'm still going through this, but essentially what it means is that the refinery can no longer refine all the different materials. Instead, it needs facilities, so just like the factory, to refine a specific material. So you will essentially need to make a facility in every refinery if you want it to produce scrap, components, or explosive materials or so. They won't be able to do all three, essentially. So, I mean, my only concern is the fact that without this knowledge, it might be impossible to tell at a glance on a map or so whether or not actually, this goes for factories as well, because now you won't be able to tell if said refinery or factory inside said town can even be used for the purposes you want. So all you might know is that there is a factory or refinery, but you won't know if the refinery you're bringing all your explosive mats to, or so, or all your sulfur to, has the ability to even refine that into explosive mats, basically. So, or if it's only specialized for turning scrap into basic mats. Same goes for factories. So you might want to just make a bunch of small arms or so, but you don't know if the factory you're going to has the facilities to actually accommodate that. So I'm wondering if they have it where the map actually shows what the factory or the refinery is specialized in, or if you have to kind of memorize it, I guess. So that's something to look into. Let's scroll down to the gameplay and feature changes. So, like I said before, the facilities or so, they're basically upgrades onto world structures, but there's actually something interesting as well. So, FOBs, so FOBs, forward bases, essentially. There's now a new meta that is now going to be a part of this this update, which is really interesting. I want to see how this works. So, essentially, forward operation bases will have different facilities, essentially. You can either get a small garrison or you can have a large garrison. The small garrison... actually, let me go into another level down first. Actually, it's going to be related down here to the base mechanics. So, essentially, they're taking out tunnel networks. Tunnel networks are gone. So what they're doing is a new mechanic where your projection of AI firing turrets and fortifications or so are all going to be fixed around bases, and bases have now had a expanded radius of 80 meters, which isn't that bad or so. It's pretty good or so, and town bases will have the ability to build out to about 150 meters, and essentially to handle the decay situation, essentially you can build facilities for bases, small garrisons, that if they have garrison supplies inside, they will prevent structures around the base from decaying or so. And then having a large garrison basically reduces the cost or so of garrison supplies required to prevent structures from decaying. It also goes into the different facilities for the factory. So essentially, a factory can have a small arms facility that will produce small arms weapons like, rifles, SMGs or so. It will have a special facility that will probably be used to make HMGs and carbines and storm rifles. Utility will be used to make tools like binoculars and wrenches and whatnot. Some medical supplies, self-explanatory. Bandages, medical kits, revive kits or so. Supplies, basically the ability to make shirts. And then the basic material, refined material, and explosive material facilities that are necessary in order to refine scrap into basic mats, components into refined materials, and sulfur into explosive materials. So basically what I said before. And what else do we have here? Let's see. Small launch garrison facilities. It's now required to upgrade bases. Okay, yeah. So essentially, in order to upgrade a base to Tier 2 or 3, you now need to have the small and large garrison facilities attached to said bases as well. Oh, and this is also a big thing. This is another big thing. So essentially, I should really start highlighting these things. In here, fort bases are not destroyed now. Essentially what they do now is they work kind of like towns in the sense that they are destroyed, but they turn into a husk that retains the facilities that were inside the fort base and can be claimed by the enemy faction or so. So essentially there's now a new meta, essentially. Well, instead of building occasional forward operating bases and then making tunnel networks to extend the distance that you can actually make active fortifications. Instead, you are going to be making forward operating bases throughout the entire map, and essentially you're going to be supplying these forward operating bases to essentially defend themselves or so and keep their their fortifications from decaying. But if you lose the forward operating base, instead of it just being a complete loss where you have to build another one or so and quickly pick up whatever resources that are left unless they're all destroyed, they can now be captured by the enemy and then used against you. So you now have a situation where you can be fighting over the same forward bases. So there was a, there were times in the Persistent War map where people would make entire regions just full of forward bases, but now it seems that that is going to be the norm now, interestingly enough. And when you're going to be fighting over constant forward bases over and over again or so, and now the logistics is now going to be necessary to support not only the infantry, giving them weapons and ammunition, but also to support these forward bases now, essentially, by giving them constant garrison supplies so they can prevent structures from decaying, essentially, or so within their reach. Which is really interesting. What else do we have here? All town bases can be upgraded to Tier 3, which is really cool. Basically what I talked about before, so tech pods can't be directly submitted to the tech facility. They either have to be turned into research pods, which can then be sent to the tech center, or they can be turned into upgrade pods and used for facility. So there's going to be a chance to get a tech pot drop or so out of scrapping, which is really cool. So because it did kind of feel inconsistent for the most part, so that is really cool. Pistols and revolvers now have so time for. Okay, so they basically have a faster time in terms of actually zeroing in on target, so when you're aiming, which is cool because this actually will allow pistols and revolvers to be more useful in the close quarters engagements that they're in, essentially, and it should make them able to compete against other weapons. Probably with the exception of the shotgun, because there's no beating that. But they should still be useful weapons in medium to short range situations against other weapons like rifles or carbines or maybe even SMGs or storm rifles if you are fast enough, which is really cool. Oh, this is a big thing as well. So, okay, so foliage visibility mechanics. So, essentially, if you went into a bush, no one could see you. No, let me dive a little bit deeper. So, I like doing this. So, initially, if you went into a bush, essentially, it was impossible to see you whatsoever, essentially. They then changed it to the point where you could see people inside the bushes, but you would have to get within a couple of meters or so in order to see them, like maybe 10 or 5 meters or so. But they would be completely invisible, so even moving inside the bushes. Now they'll change it to the point where they are only hidden if they are not moving, which is really cool. So you can't just go into a bush and start running and gunning and shooting everyone. Now, if you are hiding in there with like a rifle or with a weapon or so, you will remain hidden, but you can't just disengage because immediately as soon as you try to run away, you'll be immediately spotted by the enemy. So it's good for ambushes, but it's not something that you can constantly use to, sneak up on a person with or so in a more offensive manner, which is kind of interesting. Previously medical lab structures have been converted into garrison building. Okay, so they essentially took out, with the new factory mechanic, they don't really need medical facilities now, so they've turned all those structures into, just garrison buildings or so, basically, which is, I guess it gives them a purpose now. Game balance, campsite is no longer available. I can't remember what the campsite was. Like I said before, tournament networks are no longer available. Instead, it will be focused completely on towns and forward operation bases. Outposts are now available in skirmish mode. Oh, this is a big one as well. AT rifle damage has been increased by 50%. So AT rifles were only effective if against basically armored cars, I guess trucks as well, and only if they weren't really paying attention to you. Like half-tracks and tanks, they were basically ineffective. I mean, I guess you could argue that that's realistic or so. If they had a mechanic where essentially AT rifles wouldn't outright destroy vehicles, but they could easily disable them or maybe break their tracks or so, hit their engine or so, something like a module system for vehicles or so, then they'll be more effective. But with the previous system, they weren't effective late game, and all they served was a way for... Actually, they were completely useless, so I really never used them. So basically, late game, it was RPGs all the way, so if you wanted to kill any vehicles. They've increased the damage by 50%. I can see this as a step in the right direction. I'm not entirely sure if this will make AT rifles still useful. So it will increase their usefulness because they're cheaper than RPGs. But I'm wondering if this will increase their usefulness in battle. Because for the most part, so when they were added to the game, really they were just a gimmick and really no one used them after RPGs were unlocked or after half-tracks were unlocked, basically, just because they would be absolutely useless after that point. Tech pots are no longer stackable, so you can't stack tech pots. This, I don't understand the logic behind this. It really does limit the amount of tech pots you can have on your person, as well as in a vehicle. I'm assuming that this is to prevent huge stacks from surfacing. We would have to look at the costs for the different facilities or so. Yeah, the different facilities and the different tech costs or so, with tech pods having to go into both upgrading factories as well as upgrading, technology. So we'll have to see how that works out. Okay, they've increased the tech pod drop by 20%, which is really good. So it's not going to be that much of a grind. Oh, and also apparently port bases are starting with 1,000 upgrade pods. So initially in the beginning of a war, now teams will have to choose what to do with those 1,000 upgrade pods. They can either use them directly, wastefully on new technology, with the fact that they won't have the facilities to actually use said technology. They could use it to make a bunch of facilities so they can actually make huge amounts of weapons at the cost of not having the highest level of technology will be behind the opponents, or make sure both. So that's kind of interesting, and it should be interesting to see how that goes. Upgrade pods have been added to supply drops. Okay, so essentially, from what I can tell, so skirmishes have always given like a bonus to the winning faction side during the world conquest. So apparently there will be the ability to actually gain extra upgrade pods if said faction wins skirmish mode. So after the war ends, or so War 14 ends, essentially winning the skirmishes will be vital to getting a head start in the next war, so War 15. Okay, so they've changed the layouts for port bases. Okay, yeah, so essentially port bases without garrison facilities will decay at a slow rate. They've okay, so they've reduced the item capacity of storage boxes from 18 to 15, but they've all base structure item capacities from 12. Wait, base structure. What? Does that mean that you can now put more item capacities in bases? I guess, but you won't have that many of them. So I don't know. I feel like that's maybe to help store more crates or so, or to organize things more leeway. Refinery cost is changed from scrap to BMAT. Okay. So, what is it? What does that mean? So, essentially, the amount of BMATs you get out of scrap has been changed. They didn't say how much, so we'll have to wait and see how that works. And refineries now require a CV to build. So, essentially, you're going to have to bring a CV to the towns themselves to actually defaultly make the refinery, essentially. That's even start to use it, so they won't just initially be built, which is interesting. Map changes. Yeah, so basically every single town... Actually, I guess I was incorrect on that. So every single town will have a storage facilities, not just the port bases. But essentially all the towns will have a factory, or a refinery and a storage facility, and how teams utilize them or so in terms of upgrading them with different facilities will be, well, yeah, will be completely on them. Trench asset has been updated. Okay, so they've updated the trenches. I don't know what that means. So, well, that can mean two things. They can either have changed the model, because if you go up to, I can't remember the name of the map or so, but if you go to the upper left region or so on the Warden side to the north, they have trenches in the middle. I'm not sure if any of the other regions have them. So what this means is that they either changed how the trenches layout is, how they work, or they might have added more trenches, which would be cool, because with the FOB setup, it would be nice to see trenches everywhere, or the ability to just make trenches outright, which would be cool. Okay, so they've changed the lock assets, so I'm not sure if that means that they've changed the textures or if they've made it so some locks can or cannot be traversed. So I know that that was there were the abilities to go and basically climb on certain rocks to get a high ground advantage. I'm not sure if they've either embraced that or completely tried to shut it down, so we'll have to wait and see how that works. Port bases have been redesigned for consistency and game balance. Okay, actually that's a good point because of the fact that some port bases were more equal than others. Some would have better layouts allowing for you to utilize them more effectively or so, and would even have more scrap yards or resource nodes than others. So yeah, that's actually really cool. So have to see how they've balanced those out. And what's the last thing? So I actually didn't read this beforehand. Friends list. Okay, so you can make friends now. So, okay, so you can make like a friend. The user interface has been reamped across the board. Oh, actually, I saw that. So apparently they're changing the user interface. It seems more like Arma from what I can tell. So it should be interesting to look at. It might take the thing that it might take a while to get used to, but I saw that they were making it so it was I guess it was easier to get a grasp on items or so, changing items or so, the situation on items or so, and lots of other changes, and they're still working on it, but it should be interesting to see how that works. Alert is now shown when you spawn into a region where your spawn point was destroyed. So it lets you know if the main spawn point in a region has been destroyed or so, or it gives you like an alert status to that. Improved robustness of initial server connect. Okay. Yeah, okay, so yeah, there was an error basically where you try to log into the game, you choose your faction, they would say that no home region was found. It was like an error apparently with the server connection code, and it looks like they've actually they've fixed this. So they've actually or they've improved it to the point where it won't happen as much. So it was not really a problem. I think if you just consistently tried to join a faction, it would eventually let you. I don't think I've ever had to start the game to actually connect to the server, which, so I guess it was a big deal for some people. I'm glad that they changed that, but I guess it wasn't that big of an issue in my opinion, I guess. Create operation button is now hidden when the player is already in an operation. Okay, so essentially if you're already in an operation, the button is hidden essentially. And they're going to be releasing a bug list soon, so a bug changes. Yeah, so that is the release notes for the dev branch. You can join it right now, so all you have to do is go to the beta tab in the Foxhole Steam properties, select the dev branch, verify the game integrity files and the local files, and then just join the war and select the dev branch server basically to join that. Let's see, and if you want to report, yeah, just go to the channel in Discord and essentially don't report bugs that have already been reported. But yeah, no, you guys are welcome to check this out if you guys already haven't. And if what is it? If they stay constant, the devs will probably drop the official update as soon as War 14 is concluded. I can probably expect that if the war continues for like another 2 or 3 or maybe a week or so, they might start implementing what is it, city or town hall requirement reductions into War 14 to get it underway basically, so they can just put up the next update. But yeah, no, check this out. I predict that it's probably going to be launching in another week. And yeah, thank you for joining me on the dev branch blog. So I hope to make more of these or so if you guys are interested. And I will catch you guys next time.